My name is Brendan Guercio. I am from the institution of the University of Rochester, the Wilmot Cancer Institute in upstate New York. I received an interdisciplinary RCC Focus Award in 2023, and I'm a genitourinary medical oncologist who takes care of patients with kidney cancer. So my research project for this award focused on whether or not diet and the microbiome might play a role in how well patients do on immunotherapy with kidney cancer. We know from a number of studies that the microbiome, which is essentially the bacteria that live in our gut, can have effects on the immune system. And there have been studies in some other cancers suggesting that diet might play a role too, since those bacteria essentially eat what we eat and are dependent on our diets for their own nutrition. And we were especially interested in fiber because dietary fiber can be broken down by good bacteria into certain kinds of metabolites with immunomodulatory properties. One of these metabolites, called butyrate, is a metabolite that's called a short-chain fatty acid that's thought to be potentially beneficial for people in terms of their immune system and potentially on immunotherapy. So we set out to see whether or not dietary fiber might be associated with better outcomes on immunotherapy, and also whether or not pathways that lead to production of butyrate from those bacteria in the gut help. So we've found a number of interesting findings from our research project so far. We did see that there was an association with longer control of cancer among patients who had higher amounts of fiber in their diet, which is what we originally hypothesized we would find. And when we looked in the stool of patients who are on immunotherapy, we found that genetic pathways that are known to be related to how fiber is broken down into butyrate seem to also be associated with these better outcomes, suggesting that these good bacteria were playing an important role in how patients do on immunotherapy. So what we specifically looked at in the stool of patients on immunotherapy was whether or not they had bacterial genes that are known to play a role in the fermentation of fiber that we eat into butyrate, that metabolite that modulates the immune system. And that pathway is called the acetyl-CoA pathway. And what we found was that patients with higher abundance of those genes from the acetyl-CoA pathway did better on immunotherapy and had control of their cancer on the immunotherapy for longer periods of time than patients who had lower abundance of those acetyl-CoA pathway genes. So in terms of what I think patients should know right now about how diet and the microbiome may play a role now or in the future for their care on immunotherapy, I would emphasize that there's a lot of really exciting data coming out suggesting that this may play an important role soon. We are still in somewhat early days, so a lot of our findings still need to be verified in randomized clinical trials before they become part of the standard treatment approach. I think the good news so far is that the data available on diet suggests that what we would typically think of as a healthy diet rich in vegetables and fruits is possibly beneficial and probably not harmful. So it's certainly not a bad idea to follow your doctor's advice and just eat a generally healthy diet. And in terms of using things like probiotics and other sorts of supplements to improve the microbiome and immunotherapy results, a lot of those approaches are still really considered experimental, but there are really important clinical trials that are planned, like one through SWOG, which is a very important clinical trial group that's going to be looking at certain probiotics that have looked very helpful in small studies. And so I'd certainly encourage patients who are starting immunotherapy to consider participating in those studies if they're available to them, to help us find the answers that'll help more patients in the future. So the support from the KCA and also the Coric Foundation in supporting this project was absolutely essential in helping my career as a young investigator interested in helping patients with kidney cancer. It's led to some really exciting results that we're presenting at IKCS, but also working on publishing as a full manuscript in a peer-reviewed journal very soon. And it also led directly to preliminary data that helped me obtain additional funding in the form of career development awards that will allow me to continue doing research to hopefully help more patients with kidney cancer in the future. I think researchers and physicians across the field of medicine are increasingly realizing that collaboration with patient advocacy groups like the KCA is really essential and also really helpful to the researchers and physicians, because not only do they provide really amazing support for projects to help patients with kidney cancer, but they also help us better understand what patients with kidney cancer want and give patients a voice, which is often lacking, unfortunately, in other settings. So I'm very grateful to my interactions with the KCA and patient advocacy groups in general, because they've really helped us hone in on questions that patients want answered and that are most important to them. I think patients with kidney cancer have a lot to be excited about because of the really rapid pace of scientific developments in oncology right now. There's been so many different drug approvals for patients with kidney cancer in recent years, and I think that's only going to accelerate with time. Obviously, my project focused on immunotherapy and how to make immunotherapies that are already standard work better, but there are a lot of really exciting experimental immunotherapies and other types of treatments that are under development that I think are really going to make a big difference for our patients in future years.